you're back, and thank you so much for keeping it KBC Channel 1. My name is Samuel Njoroge. Interact with us on Twitter at KBC Channel 1, at Sami1 Njoroge. You can find me on Facebook. Samuel Njoroge is my page, and together we can have an interaction on the topic that we're bringing your way this Tuesday morning. It's all related to autism, and we've got Pooja Panessa, who is a certified behavior analyst.
That's right.
I got that right?
That's correct.
Oh, great. So even before we get to autism, behavior analyst, what does that entail?
Behavior analysts, we're basically looking at different behaviors, why they're happening, and how to change them in a systematic way. It's all scientifically based, evidence-based, and there's a lot of data collection in all the interventions that we do.
Great. And in a bit, we are expecting Jackie Mathaga from the Kenya Autism Alliance. She will be joining us in studio. Once she is here, we will be able to accommodate her into this discussion. Pooja, let's begin with defining what autism is.
Okay. So autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. It's characterized by difficulties in communication, social interaction, as well as you might notice some difficult behaviors, some stereotypical behaviors with these individuals. Yeah.
And when you talk about some of these behaviors you may note, which ones are they?
So sometimes you find children who like to rock a lot. You find them moving their fingers, like towards the light to see it in different ways. Some of them might close their ears a lot. You can find lots of running around, some hyperactivity. Yeah, those are some examples.
And when it comes to the situation back here in the country, have we yet understood fully what autism is as a population?
There have been some significant improvements in the awareness of what autism is, and we have a number of organizations that have come up as well to help this awareness increase. But there is still a big gap in awareness and knowing what exactly it is and how to intervene with it, how to help these individuals. Yeah.
What causes this gap in awareness?
Most of it is just knowledge, and lack of knowledge leads to stigma. So depending on where you are in the country, whether you're in the city or whether you're in the rural areas, there's different opinions of what autism is. I mean, you go to the rural areas, you'll find that they don't use the word autism, and they'll talk more about witchcraft, the mother being cursed, or you know, some of those ideas that are not really medically based. Come to the city, you find a lot more people do know about autism than they used to before, but it's just a matter of getting out there and learning what's happening. I think as well, because a lot of people think it's a US disorder or it's something that doesn't affect as many Kenyans or something, but autism affects everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And you did say earlier when we were opening this particular discussion that there's a lot of data in existence. Probably you can bring us up to speed with the numbers or some of the significant figures we need to note as we discuss autism in Kenya.
Okay, so in Kenya there is actually no database that I'm aware of at the moment.
Yes.
So we do not have any statistics in Kenya, but if you look at the General Center of Disease and Control in the US, we have statistics of 1 in 68 are affected by autism, and boys are affected 5 times more than girls.
Right. Isn't that a concern, the fact that we don't have any database in Kenya?
It is a concern.
How can we solve that concern? Or how can we address that concern?
It would have to come through a census or something. How else are we supposed to reach everybody? Yeah, we have some organizations and, you know, but it's difficult to actually take statistics of the whole country.
What makes it so? Because I will persist with this because usually when it comes to diseases like HIV and AIDS, malaria, typhoid, cholera, you know, you name it, there's something in terms of data that can be provided, some figures, some facts. But when it comes to autism, you rightfully say there is no existing data. Is it that the country is not sensitive to this particular topic, or are we casually treating it?
I think, again, we come back to the awareness of the topic. So the awareness is still lacking. But also, the other problem will come when we're looking for statistics is in the diagnosis. People need to be diagnosed with autism for us to be able to take the statistics of what's happening out there. Now, diagnosis over here is an issue as well. Not everybody is diagnosed. As I mentioned, if you go to the rural areas, you're going to have more witchcraft, you're going to have more of those ideologies instead.
Yes.
So how do you get an accurate figure when you have those issues?
At what point or at what stage can a parent detect that their child could be suffering from autism?
So a child can be diagnosed with autism as early as 18 months. So there's no physical symptoms when you're looking for autism in somebody. There's no physical, there's no blood test that's going to tell you they have autism. So it's all through observations. And through, when you have specialists doing the observations, you see the behaviors, you see the lack of communication. There's a whole bunch of red flags. So when they're not socially interacting with the parents, you see a lack of eye contact, they tend to play a lot themselves. So you'll see a group of children playing and this one child might be in the corner doing their own thing, lining up cars or, you know, doing something that's a little bit odd. So it takes a lot of observations through experienced professionals to get the diagnosis.
This is at 18 months.
It can be as early as 18 months.
As early as 18 months.
Typically in Kenya, we're seeing a lot of children diagnosed by the age of 3, 4.
And you said that the behavior pattern should be observed over a certain period of time. You've got a time frame?
Not necessarily. So autism, the full name you're going to call it is an autism spectrum disorder.
Yes.
The reason it is called a spectrum disorder is you have everything from low functioning, where the child could be nonverbal, have lots of behavioral difficulties, and you can go all the way to the high functioning, where they're just having difficulty with social interactions. But they're speaking, they have the other life skills that you see with the typical environment. So it depends where they are on the spectrum. So sometimes you might need to see more observations to be able to diagnose. Otherwise, it can be quite clear.
Right. And is even amongst the medical fraternity, is the level of awareness and sensitivity to the disorder, is it at the level it's supposed to be?
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't imagine so.
Why?
There are some doctors who are aware, who know, they do developmental checks and all that, but not everybody is in that boat. There are some doctors who are not very aware of what autism is. There's some who know of it, don't have enough information on it. So there's the whole range there as well.
But the information is there, it's just that they haven't accessed it, or the information is totally not there?
Information is everywhere. It's a matter of the exposure to the information.
Exposure to the information.
Absolutely.
And Pooja, when we talk of discrimination, because as I was doing my research on this topic, I came across so many articles that are talking about discrimination in Kenya when it comes to people living with the autism spectrum disorder. How can we address this as a nation? And why is this the situation in the first place?
Once again, I bring us back to awareness.
Yes.
The more aware people are, the less the stigma around the disorder, right? Knowledge is what dissolves all of these stigmas. So those who are not aware of what autism is, and you see a parent with a child in a supermarket, and then you think this child is throwing a tantrum and the parent is not controlling them, there's a lot of stigma around such situations, right? But if they're aware of what autism is and they know that there are certain communication deficits that lead to these kind of problem behaviors, and you're aware of what is around you, there would be less stigma attached.
Right. I'd like to take a quote from a gentleman. His name is Peter Ndewa. Now he's the chairman of the Association of Parents with Autistic Children in Nakuru town. And he says, autistic children are naturally hyperactive and the condition differs from one child to another. All of them have no hearing impairment, but others cannot speak audibly. But I draw your attention to this, that they are most misunderstood. They are the most misunderstood children because they appear normal and yet there are basic things that they cannot do. What are some of these basic things that they cannot do?
So when I talk about their lack of social understanding, what are the social rules that we have set in society? When I'm speaking with you, I need to look at you. When I see you for the first time, I shake your hand and I greet you. These are
Yeah.
norms that they don't understand. They actually need to be taught these things systematically. It's not something you observe somebody doing and you pick it up. So these kind of skills, they actually have to be taught. And as I mentioned, they have no physical different appearances than we do. So when you look at this child, you'll think, well, they look exactly the way the other children do. Why are they not behaving the same way?
Yeah.
They don't have the knowledge of those social skills. They actually have to be taught systematically. Yeah.
Now, let me come to the question. Is autism a disability or is it a disorder?
It is a disorder.
Uh-huh.
It is a neurodevelopmental disorder.
Right. Because most people term it as a disability. And again, you said the level of awareness is a bit low. But then now, Pooja, when it comes to dealing with, or for a parent who's watching us this morning and is having a little bit of, trouble dealing with a child who has the autism spectrum disorder, how can they go about making sure that both him or her and the child have a proper base of understanding
Well,
amongst themselves?
yeah, I think the first thing would be to definitely to reach out to others. Usually when a family goes through the situation where they've just received a diagnosis of autism, there's the whole grief cycle that the parents go through. I mean, when you hear that your child has a disorder or a disability of any kind, and you've had these visions of this child that, you have this child, this is what they're going to do in life, you first end up going through the grief cycle. It's almost the same as losing a child, right? But the biggest thing is to actually reach out to other parents because they are not alone, right? That's the biggest thing to understand is you're not alone, and there are many parents who are going through the same thing. I mean, if 1% of the population is affected, the 1 in 68 figure I gave you,
Yes.
that's a lot of people out there. So reach out, get to know others, and then get information. The biggest thing is knowledge. Find out what can you do at home, depending on where the child is on the spectrum. Do they need intervention on learning activities of daily living? So things like even brushing their teeth, washing themselves, toilet training, basic skills that normally children learn quite easily are very difficult when it comes to children with autism. So getting some help on how to teach those. Teaching communication is extremely important. As the parent in Nakuru also mentioned,
Right.
children on the spectrum don't always have means of communicating. But if you don't have a way of communicating, that leads to a lot of frustration. You can just imagine if I took away your speech for a day, chances are you would punch somebody out of frustration.
That's true.
That's what these children are going through. So being able to give them a means of communication, whether it is through pictures, through sign language, through speech, whatever the means is, they need to be able to express what they need, what they want. That is definitely a priority.
Priority in terms of understanding and making sure that at least even there's that home environment. Because then I believe if there is lack of awareness, there is stigma, and there is a lot of misunderstanding, the home environment could be compromised. But then let's look at the quality of life for anyone who is living with this particular disorder. How best can it get?
It can be completely okay. I mean, if the child is diagnosed at an early enough age, where you can start early intervention. Early intervention is key to help these individuals. The earlier they start intervention, you can imagine the earlier you get the chance to start teaching all these necessary skills, the communication, the activities of daily living. They can integrate into the mainstream education where they can join up with their peers. You teach them ways of communicating with others, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. They can lead, most of them can lead almost a normal life.
Almost a normal life. And it's basic for a child to get education.
Yes.
How inclusive is the education system in Kenya when it comes to children living with this particular disorder?
Teachers are trying very hard. We have very few specialized centers, but if you look at many mainstream schools, they do have, even in the public sector, they do have what we call little autism units. So we have a number of children with autism in these units. But the problem is the teachers have a certain amount of training. Sometimes it's not sufficient, sometimes they don't have enough teachers for those students, and they are trying their very best. Because I can tell you every teacher in this field is in there for the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of increasing the training opportunities, increasing the number of staff we have for these children. If you put children with autism in a group environment and you give them an instruction like you would in a class, everybody get up and take out your math books to page number blah, 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 like you hear in schools,
Yes.
they would not always be able to follow such an instruction, especially not initially in the intervention process. So they would need a lot of one-on-one assistance. The teacher would actually need to go there and help them do that, follow through with that instruction. Now, you can imagine in a group setting, if you have even 5, 6 students to one teacher, that's
Yeah.
not exactly easy. And you've touched upon the hyperactivity aspect. So if you have them not sitting in their seats, they want to get up, they want to go touch this, they want to go see that, and you're trying to get them to do something, it's not always easy. The teachers are trying their very best, but we don't have enough resources allocated.
Not enough resources allocated. A writer from the US came and did a study in as far as how families are coping with autism. And there's something he highlighted in his report. And he said Kenyan families and activists working to draw attention to the problems of autism are lobbying for better laws and support to try and overcome stigma attached to the disorder. Pooja, probably we can talk about the aspect of legislation. Because when you talk of absence of better laws, we're saying that legislation is not properly enhanced. What can we do to make sure that we tighten any screw that is loose in as far as legislation is concerned?
So we already have the Constitution and everything in place that says we need to give these children equal rights. It's a matter of putting it into effect. So as an example, I was sitting with Jackie, who'll be joining us, and another parent.
Right.
And we were actually putting together some suggestions for the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development on what they can do in schools to help with these children. So everything ranging from early screening. You know, we need to be able to identify these children at a younger age. A lot of parents are actually told, don't worry, they'll grow out of it. Don't worry, they'll develop speech. They're a late bloomer, those kind of things. So we need to screen early and identify that this is autism or these are the specific skills that they're lacking. Moving on to that, we need to differentiate their curriculum. So especially in our 844 system, it's a lot of rote work. This is what we're learning today, this is what we're learning tomorrow. You move on with the system. There's no differentiation that this child with autism is not going to learn in this way. We need to change the system so that they can learn better. We need a lot of accommodation happening in mainstream school so that these children can be integrated better as well.
Absolutely.
So it's more putting into practice what we already have in writing.
So it's already there.
A lot of it is already there. I mean, we have laws saying that we have to include them, we have to educate them. It's a matter of saying, how now? Make it happen.
The conversation now shifts into actualization of what
That's
is
it.
already there. And I put myself in the context of a parent in the rural areas where the word they're familiar with is witchcraft. Then they think, okay, fine, let me try and seek some medical help. Then they go to the health facility and they encounter a doctor who literally does not understand this particular condition, as you earlier highlighted. What kind of solution is this parent left with?
Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of difficulties when you go to the rural areas. I've heard of parents and interacted with people who, especially single parents, they're in the rural area, they have to leave their child at home. Their child is, especially if it's a female child, they're not safe at home. These children are very susceptible to elopement, so they'll run away very often. They don't understand what can be dangerous out there. So that's where you see the situations of the child is tied at home and the parent has left them to go to work. But what other solution do they have? You know, they're trying to keep their child safe as well as go to work. In terms of what they can do, I really try again and say reach out to others, because you don't know, there's so many people who have this disorder. They could be somebody in the community who also has it and they know what it is, you know. It's speaking to people
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking to people and trying to
Yeah.
understand this. There is an article that was written such a time last year, because April is usually Autism Month, and you actually contributed to that particular article, and it was dubbed "Don't Try to Cure Us, Just Understand Us." I will be coming to that article in a bit, but for now I would like to take a break, and when we return with Pooja Panessa right here, we shall be discussing more on this condition, autism. Therefore, keep it right here, KBC Channel 1, and together we shall have a discussion that is holistic on autism spectrum disorder. We are back, and thank you so much for joining us. Keep interacting with us on Twitter at Sami1 Njoroge or at KBC Channel 1. You can also find us on SMS, that is 20511. Begin with the initials GMK. I'm now joined by the two ladies we had earlier told you about. I've got a Jackie Mathaga, who's seated right here from the Kenya Autism Alliance. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And to my extreme left, I've got Faith Watari, the director of Hermitage. Wow, it's quite a morning. Hermitage Garden, and which deals with children who have special needs. Faith, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with you, Jackie, because we've heard a lot from Pooja, who's been with us since the beginning of the show. Dealing with a child who has autism from a parent's perspective, how is that?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? So the journey is long in Kenya, especially for most parents, especially because diagnosis doesn't come as easily to us as it comes in the West. There are cultural aspects that prevent people from seeking a diagnosis. There are also things that we tell each other, even as parents. We tell each other that, say for example, if a child is not talking by the time they are 2, if it's a boy, you keep on telling yourself that, boys talk late. And the community joins with you and tells you that, your child will talk. Boys have speech delay. We also have cultural things that make people very afraid. A lot of kids with autism are said to be cursed or said to, to have some evil spirit. So therefore, parents then are afraid of seeking the diagnosis. We actually got the diagnosis for my son when he was 5. And by the time we got to age 5, I had been waiting. There are various things that had happened before he got to that age, but finally at age 5, we got the sentence. Because what parents actually need to have is to name the thing. Once you've named the thing that affects your child, then you're able to deal with it. But before you have a name for it, you do not know what's going on. So you have a child who at 2 has a lot of aggression and temper issues. But then you're told all 2-year-old, 3-year-olds have terrible 2s. So there's nothing really that's telling you I should be looking for something extra. Of course, then there's the boys talk late thing. And then for my son, he had a lot of ear infections. It took me a while to actually realize that for an entire year between the age of 2 and 3, my son had been losing hearing progressively. So it took an ENT to actually tell me once that, your son actually cannot hear. So once we got that corrected, I then sat through his 3rd and 4th year trying to figure out, so his hearing has been corrected, so where's the speech? Then the whole of his year 4 to 5, trying to just figure out who will name this thing. From doing neurological exams and being told there was nothing wrong with that, to facing pediatricians who can't tell me that this thing is called autism, to finally one day at a church mission where missionaries had come, and there was an there was a pediatric neurologist who finally, just named it. We did an exam the Monday following the Sunday church service, and he finally said, you know what your son has is autism. And then finally, now I knew. But then once you know, the question also is, what then? Everything, everything Dr. Google tells you sometimes isn't right.
You know, what I can relate with what Pooja you've been saying, that Jackie actually went to professionals in the field, but none of them could tell her exactly what her son was going through, or what, none of them could put a name to the condition her son was going through. We'll be coming to that in a bit, but I'd like to cross to you, Faith. You run an institution, and you usually embrace these kids. Earlier, I had asked Pooja the question, how inclusive can education get for those children who are living with autism spectrum disorder?
Okay, autism being a spectrum means that there are children who might be further into the spectrum, meaning that they're experiencing more challenges with the condition, so they may not be able to cope in an ordinary educational institution, just because right now our institutions are not able to have resources that can cater for these children. From their educational aspect to their social aspect to the cultural aspect that Jackie has mentioned, to handling their diet, if some of them are probably gluten and casein sensitive, to even the teachers having the training on how to handle the children, which educational approach will work for these children. But there are schools which have actually embraced these children, and they're able to have learning support systems, so these children get the support. But for the Hermitage Garden, what we've done is put together smaller classrooms, and each child has an individualized educational plan. So a child may be 5 and probably functioning at the level of a 3-year-old, but that's the point at which they're met.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Jackie, I'll bypass Pooja and come to Jackie, but then I'll go back to Pooja. When the condition was finally diagnosed at age 5 for your son, how was the coping process for you as a parent?
Oh my goodness. So the first thing parents actually don't realize is that it's okay to grieve. And nobody tells you this as a parent. When I conceived my son, I had this grand plan. All parents do that. All parents set out their dreams for their children. You've planned his university, you have an idea what kind of job you'd like your child to do. So you've got this grand plan. And then this diagnosis comes in, and there's what the professionals tell you about what your child can and cannot do. And so you go into a grieving process. And for me, that didn't automatically mean that the entire of his 5th year, I was where I am. Because that whole year, I couldn't even talk to people about what the diagnosis was. My family knew, but then also handled me, because I was sort of like, they were walking on eggshells around me. Because any small thing that you said about my child would set me off.
Yeah.
If you wanted to discuss the diagnosis with me, it would set me off. So I went the whole thing from really crying deeply a lot, most of the time. Questions that I had for God regarding, now that I've got this diagnosis, what now? And don't forget, I wanted to name the thing, but now that I knew, so you go through the entire grieving process as if somebody died, because it's a dying of dreams. And then at some point, I had to tell myself, you know what? This is the child God has blessed you with. You really did want this child.
Yeah.
And so therefore, like snap out of it. And that started me out on the journey towards finding out how can I help my son be the best that he can be. Because you see, the thing with autism, and I'm sure the professionals will also tell you that this is true, everything starts from the parent accepting.
Right.
If the parent does not accept the condition that the child has, it's going to make it very difficult for the professionals to help the child, and it's going to make it very difficult for your child at home, because for an autistic child, autism is their kawaidaness. That's their normal. They don't know any other way. It's the world that is wired differently. They're wired differently. The world is wired to cope with people who think in a certain way. And so you as a parent have to start self-educating. Try and figure out what kind of a child you have. How does your child learn? Because there's a myth that autistic kids do not learn, which needs to be thrown out the window. Autistic kids are brilliant, most of them. Like Faith said, it's a spectrum, so there are various challenges across the spectrum, but they can achieve to the best of their ability. So it just takes the parent to determine, this is what I'm going to do for my child. So you work together with the professionals to find out what works for your child, what doesn't, and then move on from there.
Exactly.
And I guess that my journey through the acceptance process, ETC, brought me then to Kenya Autism Alliance.
Exactly.
Which is, yes.
You're rocking Kenya Autism
I'm
Alliance.
rocking blue.
And we shall get to that in a bit. Pooja, courtesy of the holes and the gaps that exist in terms of understanding this particular disorder, there's some very good work you do with Kaizora School for Autistic Children. And you've got 15 students and 14 teachers?
We've actually got more teachers than we have students.
But there's something you say, and this is in relation to the article I was talking about, that they undergo more training because most courses offered in universities only focus on counseling and psychology. So what is this extra that you offer at Kaizora that can be able to be used to effectively deal with autism spectrum disorder?
So as I mentioned, I'm a board certified behavior analyst.
Yes.
So my focus of intervention is applied behavior analysis. So when you look at the research on autism, especially the scientific evidence-based literature that there is out there, applied behavior analysis holds the highest amount of literature that is evidence-based and the highest effectiveness of the intervention for children with autism. So basically, we use what works in the evidence, and we take that to the school, and those are the procedures that we use. So everything from, we do a very in-depth individualized assessment. It's called the VB MAP. It's a very internationally based assessment, but I'm not sure where else it's done in Kenya. So we do that. It's very in-depth. It looks at everything ranging from how is this child going to the toilet? How are they independently communicating? How are they interacting with the environment? How are they imitating other people? How are they interacting socially with others? How are they playing independently? How are they doing their maths, reading, writing? Basically, every skill that we can comes under with the under 4 neurotypically developing children.
Yes.
We analyze each and every of these, and then based on their results, we come up with specialized programs for each child. So we use these programs. They sit one-on-one with the teachers. They learn through one-on-one with the teacher, but they also learn outside through natural environment teaching. And through the whole process, we collect data. So it's very easy to work with a child for a month and say, hey, they're doing so much better. But it's because you know them better, you know, not necessarily because they're actually doing better.
Yes.
So we collect data on every skill that they're doing. So we have an objective record that they are actually improving. So everything is data-driven, every decision that we make. And we obviously incorporate everything the parents want to do, the goals of the parents.
Yes.
So that is what the programs of these children look like. And we have a whole range of extracurricular activities. So we're exposing them to everything from swimming, horse riding, music, arts, crafts. So they have a holistic development as well. And I mean, we've had huge success. There is literature showing applied behavior analysis is the highest, shows the highest levels of success. And we can prove that we have children we have integrated into mainstream education that no longer need support.
Yes.
We're teaching vocational skills to many of the older ones. And the next focus is actually how are we going to take these adults with autism, because they don't stay children forever,
Exactly.
into the job, into the workplace. How do we take them into the work environment and get them jobs in our community? So individuals with autism have some amazing skills. They're meticulous on how they want things done. They're very precise. They do not get bored of repetition of things.
Yes.
So these are some skills that when you look at some industries, we look at computer software, we look at even some administration, some various industries that need repetition of things. Individuals with autism would outperform any of us any day. So these are amazing skills that we need to take to the workforce. So that is actually now the next project.
Exactly, and that's very commendable, because my next question was centered around they do not stay children forever.
Yeah.
So what next once they get into adulthood? So if there's a project happening in that regard, I would be interested to know more about it.
Absolutely.
And we shall definitely keep in touch. Faith, Pooja says that there are those very unique characteristics that come, actually let me call them gifts, that come with children living with
autism, as you teach, as they're being taught, as they're being grown into adults, what are some of those unique factors that you pick out as a teacher that we can actually concentrate and tell good stories about?
Excuse me, sorry. Each child is very unique. There are no two children with autism in the world who are the same. They all have very specific and unique abilities. Not all of them are extremely gifted.
Yeah.
That needs to be understood. But they do have unique things about them. There are children who have been able to excel in areas of, say, reading, which other children are not able to. That they're able to read at a higher functionality than other children. And usually they just need to be just taught once, and that's it. They get it, and they don't come back to it. There are children who are very good in math. And say, for example, there's a child that we've been able to integrate into a regular school, and he does his math and doesn't do the process the way the teacher wants. And for the teacher, it has been very, it's been troublesome, because why aren't you going through the process the way all the children are going through? And if he's asked, so what did you do here? He just looks, he's not able to explain. And that's frustrating to the teacher who doesn't understand. He doesn't need to explain to you.
Yes.
He got it. He understood what you asked him. He may not be able to explain it even to another child, but he's understood what you've taught him, and that's fine. Just leave him alone.
Yeah.
But in the same measure, the same child is very clumsy in the field. Cannot run, cannot kick a ball for the life of him, if it was going to save his life. He needs so much help on another level.
Yes.
Yet in the class, he's just very fast. So, and then there are others who are very gifted with music. They listen to a tune on the piano. They don't even have any piano lessons. And the moment they sit there, they just start playing, copying the person who was playing before them. So the thing is, when the child comes to us, usually most of the time, they come to us through therapy. I am an occupational therapist, and that's the route they come in through.
Yes.
And through speech therapy. So my child is not talking, they're 2.5, or they're not toilet training, what's going on, or they're not eating. So that's the point at which we start, and we realize, okay, this child may have autism, and we start going through the process of diagnosis. From there is when we look into what is this that the child is really good at.
Right.
Are they good at building things? Then probably there would be, excuse me, an architect or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to come to you, Jackie, in terms of, you're from the Kenya Autism Alliance.
Yes.
What are the immediate and long-term needs when it comes to, getting it right as far as awareness is concerned for autism?
Okay, so the entire April is dedicated to autism awareness.
Yes.
But then our dream is where we actually move from the awareness to acceptance. Because it's one thing to be aware that autism exists, and the numbers are telling us that it's 1 in 68 children have autism, and out of that, 1 in 48 are boys with autism. So that means even for a country like Kenya, the numbers are large. We have a lot of undiagnosed children walking around, undiagnosed teenagers and adults walking around. So the numbers are actually, when you look at the scenario, there are a lot of people living with autism who never actually got a diagnosis. So immediately, I would say, I don't know what they're teaching them at medical school. It's not a critique, but pediatricians and your first contact at hospital needs to be able to do that diagnosis. If you're at a village level, up country, your healthcare workers need to be able to point out that something is wrong so that you can do something about it, because early diagnosis is key. The earlier you know, the more you can introduce a lot of interventions for your child.
Right.
So that's one. Number two, I know the government has a policy on integration of special needs kids in school, but they're not equipping them. I don't know what they're teaching. Again, this is me, parents,
Yes.
saying that I do not know what they teach them at teacher training colleges and universities, but every single teacher who goes through teacher training should actually be trained in special needs. It shouldn't be a preserve of only a special group of teachers who choose it. Reason being, if the numbers are 1 in 68, as the statistics are saying, then this is a situation that should scare the entire country to sit up. And it means that in every given class, you're going to get people who are, maybe half the class will be autistic.
Yeah.
And these are the kids that half the time you hear the teacher say, that child is stupid, that child will never get it. We all grew up with kids who we knew could not ever make it academically, but look at them now as adults, they got it. Something switched on somewhere and they got their line of focus and they decided this was my career and they're doing marvelous.
Sure.
So every single teacher, in my opinion, should be at least done that. And then also there's the government support that we as parents need. One, because you're not getting, so this is not really Saidia Serikali, but then if in the West, parents of autistic kids are receiving support in pursuing therapy, then that means that the government in Kenya should actually be looking at countries in the West and adapting the same over here.
Right.
Because the kids are not going anywhere. As my colleagues said, they're going to be adults and teenagers, and what are we going to do with them?
And you can imagine.
Yeah.
And they're still part and parcel of this society. And we shouldn't, you know, sort of encourage a system that treats them as people who are separate from us.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe in the principle of inclusivity, regardless of your situation, because we all have something to offer to this wonderful world of ours. Faith Watari, thank you so much for coming. Pooja Panessa, Asante Sana, it has been a pleasure. Jackie Mathaga, thank you so much for coming through. I know there's an event coming up on Saturday.
Yes, Sunday. On the 24th and we're going to be at the Bomas, and it's a family, Autism Awareness Family Fun Day.
Yes.
So we are inviting those who may think their kids have autism, those who know their kids have autism, and the general public, because what better place to come and be aware than when you see what autism actually looks like from the parents and kids.
Professionals.
And professionals, yes,
too.
there's that part.
Who will offer the much needed professional assistance
Yes.
to the public so that we're able to understand autism spectrum disorder.
Did
Thank
you
you
say
for watching.
Bomas?
My name, it will be at the Bomas?
Yes.
On Sunday.
Thomas, on Sunday, we have a lot of entertainment for children. Supervised entertainment, so come with the children with autism.
Yes.
They will be okay.
Right.
Parents can go speak to professionals and also attend workshops the whole day.
Absolutely. My name is Samuel Njoroge. Thank you for watching. God willing, we'll catch up later. Thank you so much.